Step out of the car. Now that's what he said, flat, like a door slamming, and the way he crowded my window told me this wasn't about safety or procedure. It was about showing me my place. You know what I mean? The kind of energy that makes the air feel smaller even when you're outside in a wide school parking lot with the sun sliding off windshields and the smell of pencil shavings coming from the open gym doors. I had a laminated visitor pass swinging from my mirror, signed at 3 Haru clear as daylight, and I was parked where the sign said visitors waiting for my niece Zoe, who comes running out at 3:12 with a backpack that looks bigger than she is. And I'm thinking, this is a simple errand grab, the kid head home, pasta on the stove, nothing to see here. My name is Camille Rhodes, Cam if we're being friendly, and some days people stand when I walk into a courtroom and call me Judge Rhodes, but I don't lead with that. I've learned over time it makes folks act strange, plus the whole point of my job is to listen before I say anything to let facts get the first word, not ego. The man at my window didn't care about any of that. He planted a palm on my doorframe like he owned the Hinge uniform. Pressed nameplate reading B. Crowder, a pale little scar over his right eyebrow, like a souvenir from a bad decision, and he didn't look at my pass. He looked at me the way people look at a locked door. They're determined to kick in. Officer, I said, pass is right there, signed by the office. I'm here to pick up Zoe Rhodes. I'll be on my way when the bell rings. Step out, ma'am, he said, pulling the word ma'am like he was stretching gum trespassing. I gave that short laugh you give a magician when you can see the fishing line holding the dove, because this pass wasn't a rumor. It was plastic. It was ink. It was a signature. I watched them write, and right then a cruiser rolled up slow behind him, and a younger officer stepped out, ponytail, tight eyes, taking everything in nameplate. Valdez. And you could feel the difference in the way she scanned the scene. Windshield past my hands, like she still felt the weight of the badge more than the power of it. What's going on, Blake? She asked, neutral as a level, and he didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on me like a dare and said, "Trespasser refuses to move." Officer Valdez. I kept my voice steady. Can you have the office confirm with Ms. Kelly that I'm on the list? My sister's in the OR, I'm just covering pickup. That's when I heard it. Aunt Cam. The sound of a small person who loves you more than she understands the world. And I turned my head without thinking. There's Zoe inhaler bouncing against her backpack strap, running like only kids run when the bell lets them loose. There are moments when the air keeps a receipt. The next part plays in my head like a photo you can't stop from developing. Crowder shifting his weight, leaning in, dropping his voice so low I had to lean too. Last time you cost me a stripe, he said. This time I take yours. And just like that, the past stood up in a room I thought it had left because 12 years earlier in a different county with a different color of blinds, I was a federal prosecutor with a use of force file on my desk and an amateur video that shook at all the wrong times but didn't lie. An officer named Blake Crowder, a baton raised after the danger had passed, a board that stopped short of firing him even though the evidence pulled hard, suspension, not termination. And I moved on because you have to, but he carried me like a stone in his shoe. Stewardship teaches you to breathe when a room tilts, so I did. I put both hands high on the wheel, palms open. I said, I hear you. I also hear the law. Check the pass. Call the office. Let me take my niece home. Step out now. He said, the longer you sit, the worse this gets. And I asked back, worse for who? And that's when he opened my door like he was pulling a fire alarm. I unbuckled. I stepped out. I stayed still with my hands where the world could see them. And I watched Officer Valdez hesitate just a breath. One of those little pauses where conscience tries to find a place to stand. Parents began to lean like grass in a breeze, heads turning, phones, lifting somebody in a tan overcoat asking what's going on to nobody in particular, and Zoe was close enough that I could hear the start of a wheeze which made my head turn on instinct. And that was enough. That's all he needed for his script arms. He snapped hands behind and the cuffs kissed the skin of my wrist before the word trespass had even finished pretending to be true. I didn't fight. I have watched enough rooms explode to no restraint sometimes saves lives. I looked at the patrol car's reflection and saw the blue and red slash across the paint like a lie trying to look pretty. And I told myself what I tell people when their world folds. The truth knows how to find daylight if you don't smother it. The ride to Cedar Ridge Precinct felt shorter than a heartbeat. The booking light felt like bad grocery store fluorescence, the kind that flattens everything. The tile was that shade of green you only see in places that want you to stop feeling like a person. They took my phone, my keys, my visitor pass, the very thing they pretended not to see, and placed it on an evidence tray like a punchline I wasn't supposed to enjoy. From the desk, I could see Valdez typing, stopping, deleting, typing again, like the form demanded lies, and her hands refused to be their stenographer. And then she walked to the tray, picked up my pass, read the signature, frowned like a math teacher who knows the sum on the board is wrong. They put me in holding, which is funny because I have been in that room more times than I can count, but always with a notepad in my lap and a door that opened for me. And the first time you hear the hinge lock, you in your bones learn a new sound. Through the wall, I heard the words that get used like sandpaper to smooth ugly things, non-compliant trespass protocol. And then I heard a different tone, low and proud. Crowder in the break room selling a story to the kind of crowd that laughs so they don't have to think she thought she could talk her way out, not today. Here's the thing about truth, it's loudest when someone tries to bury it, because about 30 minutes later I heard the duty desk mouse click, not a radio crackle, a mouse. And I knew somebody pulled up the body cam file, the little red dot that says recording isn't poetic but it's honest, a hallway taking notes, that's all it is. The door eased open a few inches and a paper cup slid in. Judge Rhodes, Valdez said softly, like she was trying the title on her tongue. You want some water? And I looked up and asked, you know who I am? And she nodded, yes ma'am, and I said, then you know this is wrong. And she swallowed like she'd just taken a truth that didn't fit in her mouth. I saw the pass. I saw the video. They released me that night on my own recognizance. No apology, no admission, just a clipboard voice asking for signatures. And I stepped out into a thin rain that smelled like metal, and across the street a reporter in a gray coat lifted her phone and said, off the record, are you going to fight this? And I buckled my seatbelt and told her what I actually do for a living. I don't fight rumors, I file motions. By morning, 3 different parent angles had been stitched into a neat little thread in the neighborhood group by lunch. It went local by dinner. Somebody on TikTok laid it under a choir hook that would have been funny if the topic wasn't my life. And that night, while Zoe sat with the nebulizer playing its soft white noise, I did the thing that always calms me down. I wrote the timeline clean. 2:55, call to the office. 3:00 pass, signed by Ms. Kelly. 3:10. I park in the visitor lane. 3:12 bell. 3:13 confrontation. 3:16 restraint applied despite visible compliance. 3:17 arrest articulated as trespass. And I filed an emergency hearing with a preservation order for every frame, every radio call, and for whatever automated license plate ping supposedly tripped this whole mess. The morning of the hearing, courtroom 2C looked like a civics lesson, and a reality show had been double-booked, parents with lanyards still on teachers pretending not to recognize each other, reporters who smelled like coffee and deadline, and when the state tried to lead with the phrase we all know, failed to comply with a lawful order, I let them say it. Then I asked the clerk to roll the tape. There is a particular sound a room makes when truth steps in without knocking. It's not loud. It's the inhale people take when their mouths can't keep up with what their eyes are seeing. And as the red dot blinked and Crowder's voice said, "Step out trespassing," while my pass swung in the corner of the frame like a tiny flag that refused to sit down, you could feel the temperature change. You can hear Zoe yell, "Aunt Cam." You can hear my voice hold steady, even while my face stays still. You can watch my open hands, and then watch his fingers clamp my wrist. And when the clip ended, we let silence do its old job, the honest kind. And then Ms. Kelly took the stand and swore she issued the pass at 3:00, verified my name, handed it to me, and later that afternoon was told to remove the entry from the visitor log. By whom, the judge asked, and Ms. Kelly said the principal, Teresa Whitcomb, and that sentence weighed more than the bench itself. Anything further, the judge asked me, and I lifted a copy of the security contract that Harbor Point inked with the private firm. $2.1 million a year for the package that included the license plate system that flagged me, supervised by Mr. Crowder, greenlit by Ms. Whitcomb, and triple the cost of comparable schools while offering fewer on-site hours and no independent audit. And I didn't say kickback because courts like facts, not winks, but I let the numbers sit there and do what numbers do when they're side by side with common sense. When I asked Crowder if he recognized me the second he tapped my window, he said yes. When I asked if he remembered the disciplinary hearing a decade earlier, he said it wasn't relevant when I asked if he told me. Last time you cost me a stripe, this time I take yours. He stared at the rail like it had stolen his alibi, and the judge dismissed trespass. Right there, ordered a formal review of the contract and of the conduct of Crowder and Whitcomb, and banged the gavel in a way that sounded like relief. On paper, that's a win, right? And yeah, that happened, but in real life, wins feel like doors opening onto staircases you didn't ask to climb because the Beacon ran a series on school security contracts across the county. Invoices started surfacing that looked like they'd been filled out by an optimist with a shaky pen. Parents showed up to board meetings with voices that didn't shake and questions that didn't end with a question mark. The district started saying big words like transparency and audit. Ms. Whitcomb resigned for personal reasons that cost the school 6 months of salary, and Crowder was put on leave pending investigation, while the body cam clip ran on local news at 6 and 11, like a PSA about what power looks like when it forgets its oath. Meanwhile, life kept doing that thing life does. Zoe went back to school. Kids said the wrong thing because fear is loud in 4th grade too. Some called her the girl whose aunt got arrested. Some asked if sirens echo in your dreams. A few asked if the judge's robe is heavy, and we found her a counselor who gave her a soft place for hard questions, and she started drawing to put the rest somewhere ink can hold it. The picture she made of me, standing in a courtroom holding a little visitor pass like a flag, lives on my fridge, and it makes me cry and stand taller at the same time. As for Valdez, she did exactly what conscience says to do when procedure tries to swallow it. She logged the footage, turned over the dispatch timing and radio calls, and when some talk radio voice called her a traitor, she made a sandwich and went to work anyway. 6 months later, she became sergeant. People said politics. I said that's a small down payment on the interest the universe owes. Here's the part nobody posts on Instagram after the gavel and the headlines and the policy memos. The knot in your chest learns to loosen in slow motion the first time I turned back into that school lane months later to speak to parents about safety and dignity. My palms sweated on the steering wheel, like my car remembered the soundtrack I parked in the sun. I stepped out and I stood exactly where I had been told to step out before the asphalt was fresh. The cameras were new. The sky was the same blue and just as indifferent. And I took a breath that felt like choosing to stay. I told the parents what I believe using the kind of words you don't need a law degree to feel. Justice doesn't start in courtrooms. It starts in small places like parking lots and front offices where people decide whether rules belong to everyone or just the comfortable. And afterward, a dad with a toddler on his hip thanked me in a voice full of gravel and apology, and a mom joked about never trusting a laminated pass again, and we laughed because humor lets strangers step closer without asking for blood. A week later, I got a plain white envelope with block letters saying, "You won 1 round. The system is still here, be careful," and there wasn't a threat in it so much as a confession, like someone telling me institutions outlast people, and maybe they do, but habits outlast headlines too. And that note went into the folder with the orders and the invoices and a photo of Zoe grinning with her inhaler because sunlight and record-keeping are cousins. 3 years now, the county audits every school security contract over $1 million. Every officer who sets foot on a campus wears a camera, and someone outside the building reviews the footage. People nicknamed it the Road Standard, and I refuse to say that out loud because change isn't a plaque. It's a habit you choose on days when nobody is watching. And still there are mornings when my jaw is tight for reasons I don't identify until I pass a row of white parking lines, and there are afternoons when a young public defender sits in my chambers, and I hear myself say the same thing I told my own bones in that patrol car: hold still, breathe, keep your palms open where the world can see them, and make sure a camera can too. And then there are Saturday mornings when Zoe laughs at some bad joke I make, and that sound redecorates the whole house, and quiet evenings when I water the basil and realize I can taste that particular shade of green again. People ask if it was race, if it was power, if it was a grudge, if it was money, and the answer lives where answers usually live in a messy little corner where more than one thing can be true at the same time, because bias doesn't need a memo to clock in, ego doesn't need a plan to trip a person who is standing still, and a bloated contract doesn't need a villain to cost a community its trust. I wish the twist was fancier, but the real twist is always the same. A laminated pass and a body cam beat swagger documentation is a love language when the room goes cold and small facts are louder than titles if you give them a microphone. I didn't feel brave in that parking lot. I felt tired and annoyed and protective of a kid with a pink inhaler. The bravery, if there was any, lived in choosing not to let anger talk for me, in letting evidence do the talking and trusting that procedure, the honest kind, would carry more weight than a smirk, and that's the path I kept my feet on. So that's my story told the only way I know how, plain a little bruised with the jokes I keep for when the room gets tight. And now I want to hear from you because this part is where we figure out if we just watched a video or we built something together. Tell me what you think was right or wrong here. Tell me if you've ever been treated like a problem in a place you had every right to be. Tell me if your kid or your neighbor or your aunt had a moment where a badge forgot its oath drop, your city drop, your state drop. The thing you wish someone had said for you in that moment, and tell me this straight. Should every school contract be public and independently audited with zero exceptions? I'll be in the comments reading. Yeah, that's right. And if you want more stories that try to turn noise into daylight, hit subscribe, share it with the one friend who needs to know. They're not crazy. I'm Cam. I'm still here. And I still believe the truth finds a way out when we let it breathe.